Greetings, everyone. Hi, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome to this our next session of, our first session of our um, reading Plato's Apology. Okay, we're using the Thomas West Gray Scary edition from the Cornell University Press. It's the one I've known many translations. This is a very literal translation. This is one that is actually very good that I know. Um, I knew it from when he first wrote this as part of a dissertation that was published from Cornell, and hence Cornell wanted to publish the four text series, which is the famous three from Socrates' trial, the Euthyphro, the Apology, cried out, and then he adds this Aristophanes clouds. So let's do it. Today we're looking at the first bit of this, which is um, here. The list to our thing. It's from part one, speech 17 to 21a, which is the first speech. So let's go look at this. Um, okay, let's go kill this. Kill that for our purposes and turn to this. Let's go to the speech. It starts out, it always starts out with the apology is almost like a completely present act. Okay, this is not Socrates. I mean, Socratic dialogues usually are reported, narrated, and then like a play. But this is in a way kind of like the speech, but we don't. We mostly only get it from Socrates' perspective. We don't get really the prosecution's case. We don't. The prosecution would have made their case first. We don't get that. We get Socrates will cross-examine two of the prosecutors, but we don't get their prosecution. Okay, in the apology, you only get Socrates. So this is Socrates' apology, which is a defense of himself. Okay, that's the uniqueness of this as a play. It begins. How you men of Athens have been affected by my accusers, I do not know. In other words, he opens it up with the accusation that the Athenians. Okay, remember this is a trial. The Athenians not like a normal jury trial like we are Anglo-American, or even a case of judges. The judges are the jurors, and the jurors are the citizens attending in the assembly, and there should be a significant number. Usually, what happened would be the citizen Athens was a kind of a participatory democracy, but not really. It was almost like a first cut. There were so many seats in the assembly, and you were paid to go to the assembly. So first come, first serve. Those who came in there. Um, and the normal typical thing would be that the beginning part would be business, and then the later half of the day would be trials, and not murder trials, not like that. Those kind of trials were separate and done by a different thing. These were the accusation. This is the place where citizens with accusations made accusations against each other for other things like lawsuits and things like this would go here, and the assembly would hear them. Okay, and the assembly would make it. In this case, three accusers make a claim that Socrates has committed certain crimes. There'll be three crimes, and this is thanks. What he's saying, you have been affected by my accusers. For my part, even And for my part, even I nearly forgot myself because of them. In other words, so persuasively they speak. So therefore, he's just basically announcing that even he's been persuaded by the prosecutors. In other words, the people who spoke before him made the cases against Socrates, and he says they were persuasive, and even I have been persuaded by them. Right? Uh, 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 and yet they have said, so to speak, nothing true. So nothing they've said is true. He's saying. I wonder most at one of the many falsehoods they told when they said that you should beware that you are not deceived by me, since I am a clever speaker. They are not ashamed that they will be immediately refuted by me indeed, as soon as it becomes apparent that I am not a clever speaker at all. This seemed to me to be the most shameless of them, unless, of course, they call a clever speaker the one who speaks the truth. In other words, again, this is a case where he's going to be saying that um, I mean, the prosecutor said, "You better be careful because he's gonna do his rhetorical tricks on you, and you'll be conned." And he's a clever speaker. Now, he's the thing about this is that Socrates is saying, "I'm not a clever speaker." And actually, their lie is going to be revealed by how badly I speak in front of you right now, right? Unless they mean by clever speaker someone who is what he says here. Uh, uh, Unless they call us clever speaker, the one who speaks the truth. For it is this, for for if this is what they are saying, then I too would agree that I am a orator, speaker. Orators, people who engages in speech, rhetoric, but not of their sort. So they, as I say, have said little or nothing true, while from me you will hear the whole truth. And because he uses the name by Zeus, he brings the gods, swearing by the god. When they in a kind of when in these kind of Greek things, the name the gods is to call them for authority as witnessing for them, or witness for them, witnessing for them in their act, who they are, and um, and this is a very powerful thing in that sense. Um, so therefore, he goes, but men of Zeus, no, sorry, but by Zeus, men of Athens, not beautifully spoken speeches like theirs, adorned with phrases and words. Rather, what you will hear will be spoken at random in the words that I happen upon. For I trust the things that I say are just. For I trust that the things that I say are just, and let none of you expect otherwise. For surely it would not be becoming men for someone of my age. I'm an old man. I'm in my 70s. Okay, to come before you fabricating speeches like youth. And men of Athens, I do very much beg and beseech you this of you. If you hear me speaking in my defense with the same speech as I'm accused to speak both in the marketplace and the money tables, where many of you have heard me, and elsewhere, do not wonder or make disturbances because of this. In other words, he's saying, um, if I start speaking the way you've heard me speak out in the marketplaces and out there, many of you will see me know that I'm going to be speaking in the sense that I'm going to be speaking like I always have spoken. I'm not going to change my speech. He's saying here that if I'm sounding like I normally sound and speaking, talking how I talk and normally talk, don't make disturbances. Why are you saying that? He says, uh, 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 for this is how it is. Now is my first time that I have come before the law court at the age of 70. Hence, I'm simply foreign to the manners of speech. In other words, he's not going to be doing the things people in the courts normally do because he doesn't go to the courts regularly. He says I'm not going to the court. And this is the first time. I'm 70 years old, and I'm not used to the way things are done in these kind of legal disputes. I've not been here. I've not engaged in them. I'm a man of 70. I'm set in my ways. I'm going to do like I normally do. So if you don't get angry, don't make disturbances and be upset or offended by what I'm doing. Okay. Uh, 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 um, Hence, I'm simply foreign to the manner of speech here. So, just as if I really did happen to be a foreigner, you would surely sympathize with me if I spoke in the dialect in the way which I was raised. And so I do beg this of you now, and it is just that, at least as it seemed to me, Leave aside the manner of my speech, for perhaps it may be worse, perhaps better, and instead consider the very thing and apply your mind to this, whether the things I say are just or not. Ignore the way I speak. Pay attention to what I'm saying and to see if what I'm saying is just or not. Okay, right? Pay attention. Don't pay attention to style. Pay attention to substance. Right? For this is the virtue. Now, the virtue here, arete. This is a note here. He'll say that a big note. Virtue arete. This is excellence. Ex. I'll talk about this in a second. I said, for this is the excellence of a judge, the virtue of a judge. While that of an orator is to speak the truth. So the excellence, the concept of excellence, arete. Arete is something to eat. Now, we also translated to virtue. I don't like this because virtue is a Latinate word, and it originally meant the manliness of a man, but then it became over time, this great, as Strauss and Bloom always joked that the greatest question in history of political philosophy is how virtue, which originally became what virtually was understood as the manliness of a man to mean the innocence of a young little girl. Okay, the chastity and purity of a young girl. Virtue shifted from something very masculine to something very youthfully feminine. The Greek word here, arete, translated excellence, misses excellence doesn't have that same problem that the Latin word virtue does. Okay, excellence means doing things well. It is the well doing, and this is what arete means. It means when you do an action or the thing that you're doing, the mental activity. In other words, it can be a kind of, it's usually tied to some kind of action, intellectual or physical, okay, or some kind of act, and it's the way that it's done, and it's looking at it how it was done, truth, looking at using the question of truth to the action and seeing how the action or the thing is done at its peak best. In other words, and therefore virtue is understood as the thing that which is done beautifully, perfectly, correctly. The virtue is understood in this sense of doing, now in terms of actions and deeds, it is understood always that it is the virtuous or the excellent thing. Excellence is this kind of achievement of doing it finely, of doing it in a way beautifully, that it was done to perfection. Now, we can understand this in terms of like all we talk about the virtues or the excellences, like moral, about regarding, the famous one from Aristotle, fear, regarding to emotion and overcoming them fear. That was courage, overcoming our lusts and desires, moderation, right? Or sophistry, sound mindedness, being sound in our decisions and like this. Um, the classic virtues, um, having, exercising our judgment regarding actions and how to act and behave, prudence, right, pronesis, uh, excellence. Now he's saying the excellence of a judge is to get to the heart of the matter. Don't pay attention to the style or the style of the thing. You pay attention to what is said, whether the thing is just or not. Okay. The virtue of a judge is to concern yourself with whether the act or the thing was just or not. Whether you're concerned with the truth of the act, and concerning whether it was just or not. Whereas the rhetoric should be concerned with telling the truth, not with style. And actually, this is a very famous critique, Socrates' critique of rhetoric. The problem with most rhetoric cares about style and not with truth. Well, he's concerned with truth, and he's going to uh, um, he doesn't care about style. Hence, why he's going to. He's like, I'm not going to care about style. I'm more concerned about the truth of the matter in this sense. Okay, so therefore, this is how we end the first paragraph here. So First, men of Athens, it is just for me to speak in defense against these false charges, against me and the first accusers, and next against the later charges and the later accusers. So there's two types of accusers. There's the people who've accused me first, um, uh, 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 and the charges they brought, and then the later accusers, these three we're talking about, and well, the charges they brought. Okay, so there's two sets of accusers he talks about. For many have accused me to you, even long ago, talking now for many years, saying nothing true. And I fear them more than Antyllus, which is one of the accusers, Antyllus, and those around him, although they too are dangerous. But the others are more dangerous men. They got a hold of many of you from childhood, and they accused me and persuaded you, although it is no more true than the present charge, that there is a certain Socrates, a wise man. No, he means this, a sophist, right? This is a sophist, wise man, a sophist, and a thinker. Again, Phironist, a warrior, and I think you're a warrior, on the things aloft, who have investigated all the things under the earth, and makes the weaker speech the stronger. Pardon. God, coughing. Be careful. No, it's not an advertisement for Pepsi. So this is the opinion that there's a wise man, Socrates, a thinker, on the things aloft, high things, and who have investigated all things under the earth, and who makes the weaker armor stronger. Those men of Athens who have scattered this report about are my dangerous accusers. For their listeners hold that investigation of these things also do not believe in the gods. Therefore, you need to get the higher things or those things. If you believe in the things aloft and the things under the earth, these are the pre-Socratics, or philosophers. The pre-Socratics who believed in the things high in the sky and things aloft. But these people who engage in these kind of things don't believe in the God. So therefore, the argument is that if he's one of these, then he doesn't believe in our gods, right? Besides, there are many of these accusers, and they have been accusing me for a long time now. Moreover, they spoke to you at an age when you were most trusting, when you were children and youths, and they accused me in the case that simply went by default, for no one spoke in my defense. And the most unreasonable thing of all is that even it is not possible to know and to say their names unless a certain one happens to be a comic poet. And if you hear, this is Aristophanes, The Clouds, right? Those who persuaded you by using envy and slander, and those who persuaded others after being convinced themselves, all of these are the most difficult to get at. For it is not possible to have any of them come here forward and refute him. But it's necessary for me simply to speak in my defense as though fighting with the shadows and refuting with no one to answer. In other words, he has to refute them because these are the opinions that you add. He can't call them forward to bring them here and challenge them. And so therefore, he's fighting at a handicap in this sense. So, what is that? What is that? So, okay, it's not impossible to come forward in defense when fighting them, refuting, and we. So you must okay. In other words, he's fighting with shadows and refuting with no one to answer. Right. So you too must deem it to be as I say, that there have been two groups of accusers. The one accusing me now, and the others long ago, of whom I speak. And you must also suppose that I should first speak at defense against the latter, for you heard these accusing me earlier, and much more than those latter ones here. In other words, you expect me to address those guys first because you've heard them more before you've heard these guys. So I should address them about this, and then I'll address these guys. Well, then a defense speech must be made, men of Athens, and the attempt will be made in the short time to take away from you this slander, which you have acquired over a long time. Now, I would wish that I may turn. I would wish that it may turn out like this: that if you in any way better, it, if it is in any way better, it is any way better, both for you and for me, that I may accomplish something by making a defense speech. In other words, he said, it would be, I'm going to accomplish something for you or for me, something better from this, out of this whole thing. It's bad, I'm here doing this anyways. I'm going to just take this as an opportunity to give some benefit, both for me and for you. So yes, yes, I'm going to try to address the accusations, but I'm also going to try to make some benefit, some good here, something good for you and for me. Okay, in other words, he's offering this in that sense. Okay, but I suppose it is hard, and I'm not at all unaware of what sort of thing it is. In other words, this whole thing that I'm doing here. I'm not unaware that this is going to be hard, and I'm not unaware of how what this sort of thing should be. Right. Nevertheless, let this proceed whatever way is dear to the God. For the law must be obeyed, and the defense speech must be made. In other words, I have to give it. The law must be obeyed, and the defense speech must be made. So I'm going to go forward the best I can. He says here now. Now he goes. So let us take up from the beginning what the accusation is from which has arisen the slander against me, which in fact is what Meletus. Okay, Meletus, Antyllus are two. Meletus is the second one. He led the prosecution case against Socrates. Was the young and unknown in Athens. This young and unknown guy. If we go back here to the stuff, was it? This, I think it goes back here to. Note 6, page 64. Humanity is the most important of Socrates' two accusers. Although he did not himself initiate the persecution, Meletus did. This is from Euthyphro, right? And this appears in Plato's Meno, where he becomes angry with Socrates and threatens in a discussion with him. So therefore, in other words, Socrates appears to praise the sophists and attack the politicians in their capacity as educators. In other words, he's a tanner. Annotator was a tanner by trade. He's a politician. Okay, so he's angry in the Meno where he attacks the politician. Now we know that Metellus is a young innocent person who's coming, not young, an unknown person who wants to make himself things, and he introduces the case and brings in Antyllus as kind of like another stronger, more known person. And like, in other words, the three who prosecute, it's going to be a politician who's a craftsman, an artist, and I think a rhetor. I think that's the. And that therefore there is this understanding of what's going on here. Um, um, in other words, the slander against me, which Middleus had trusted when he brought the slander indictment against me. Well, then, what did the slanderers say to slander me? Their sworn statement, just as though they were accusers, must be read. Socrates does injustice. Okay, that's in footnote 12. It's about expression to do injustice means to commit a crime, right? Socrates does injustice, is a meddlesome by investigating things under the earth and the heavenly things, but by making weaker speech the stronger, and for teaching others the same things. It is something like this. For you yourselves also used to see these things in the comedies of Aristophanes. A certain Socrates was carried about there, claiming that he was treading on air and spouting such other drivel about which I have no expertise, either much or little. 13. This is, again, Socrates is referring to the clouds here. Clouds lines 218 and 225. And I do not say this to dishonor this sort of knowledge. If anyone is wise in such things, may I never be prosecuted with such great lawsuits by Meletus. But in fact, I, men of Athens, share no thing, have no share in these things. In other words, he's saying, I'm not really. I mean, there are people who do investigate the things above and things below, and there's nothing dishonorable in doing this, but I'm not one of them. Okay, I'm not one of them, he says, right? And if I was, I would, it would be no shame in it. But please not have merciless prosecute me for this, right? But I, men of Athens, have no share in these things. Again, I offer many of you as witnesses. Now, 15, the hoi polloi, the many, an expression referring here to the majority of the jury. In other words, I will offer the hoi polloi, the many of you, as witnesses, um, uh, um, uh, uh, as witnesses, and I maintain that you should teach and tell the others, those of you who have ever heard me conversing. And there are many of among you, tell each other then, if any of you heard me conversing about such things, either much or little, or from this, you will recognize that the same holds also for the other things that they say about me. In other words, many of you have seen me about talking and doing things. Many of you here have, because the juries have met people in the streets and people the things that, how people are. And they would have saw Socrates, they would have witnessed Socrates in the marketplace and these things, confronting the sophist and the craftsmen and things like that. And what is he saying? He's saying, you can witness, you know what I do. And I've said, have I ever talked about the stars in the sky or the things below the earth, the atoms and the elements and this thing? Now, if this is not, if you know that this is, of course, tell everyone that you know it. Tell your peers here. Tell your peers. And what he's hoping here is he's arguing that this is going to be the case where, if this is not true, then probably the other things are not true. Okay. Uh, um, and tell each other. And if any of you have ever heard me converse in such thing, either much or little, and for you to recognize that this same holds for the other things that the many say about me. In other words, if what's no, you've seen it. Therefore, you can say that this is not true. That I never engaged in these kind of things with you guys. So if that's not true, then maybe the other things that they say is not true. Remember the three things. But in fact, none of these things are so. And you have heard from anyone that I attempted to educate human beings and make money from it, and that's not true either. In other words, I don't take money for paying. In other words, he's not a sophist. The sophist is someone. The idea here is the sophist has claims of wisdom and sells that wisdom to others, educators. Now, Socrates does not take his wisdom for pay. Though this too seems to me to be a noble, if one should be able to educate human beings like Gorgias of Leonates or Precotus of Kos and Hippias of Elis. These are the three of the great sophists, right? who Socrates had interaction with. For each of them, men, is capable of going into each of the cities to persuade the young, who can associate with whomever of their own citizens they wish for free. They are persuaded. They persuade these young men to leave off their association with the latter and to associate with themselves instead, and to give them money and acknowledge of gratitude besides. So therefore, in other words, these men, the sophists, are able to convince every people that they abandon their friends and their associates to work to be their students and to give them money as well and benefits. Now Socrates goes, and for that there is a man here from Paros, a wise man, who I perceived was in town. For I happened to meet the man who had paid more money to sophists than all the other, Callus, the son of Hippocrates. I always butcher names, okay? Or any, Hippocamus. I questioned him, for he has two sons. Callus, I said, your two sons have been. If your two sons had been colts or calves, we would have been able to get and hire an overseer for them who could make them noble and good in their appropriate virtue. In other words, an animal's virtue is being able to do this. You could train an overseer who would oversee the horses and train the horses to be better horses. We could, if your children were like these colts, we could have hired someone for this. Um, uh, 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 um, uh, and make them noble and good. And that 19 is that in the Greek, noble and good is the kalos ka agathos. That's kalos hagagathos. That means the noble and the good. This is, I disagree with the West here. Kalos also means beautiful. It means beautiful. Agathos means good. The kalos kalos means beautiful too. In fact, the Greeks would prefer beautiful. I would even prefer beautiful. Fine, wondrous, beautiful. Noble is kind of like we would associate with the aristocrats. This is noble in this sense is not. It means better looking. Something that's more attractive and a higher. Okay, something 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 that is awe aspiring. Okay, the beautiful of these two, the noble and the good, the beautiful and the good, in their appropriate virtue. And he would have been someone from the among those skilled with horses and skilled with farming. In other words, we get proper virtue, proper thing. But it is since that and since these two human beings whom you have in mind to get an overseer for these two of them, who is knowledgeable in such virtue that of a human being and citizen. In other words, this is interesting. Who has knowledge of if you okay horse traders? Who has the knowledge of the excellences, the arete? And arete is making one beautiful, kolo agathos, a beautiful and good. Okay, who can make if the artisan, the techne, the person engaged in the techne of horse craftsman or horseman or horse trainer is taking the horse, knowing the horse, how to make the horse better horse, right? So, what is the virtue? Who has the virtue? What kind of virtue is it that takes a human being and makes them and this is double fold, as Socrates says. Remember, makes him a better human being and a better citizen. Who has the skill? Who has what art, what craft, what virtue, what kind of skill or virtue is it that makes one a good human being and a good citizen, right? For I suppose you have considered it, since you possess sons. Is there someone, I said, or not? Quite so, he said. Who, I said. And where he's from, and how much does he teach? How much does he teach? Evenus, he said. Socrates, Evenus, he said. Socrates from Paros. Five Mina. Okay, no, five Mina, 22. 22 here is Evenus from the Aegean island of Paros. Besides teaching for pay, wrote lyric poetry and discussed rhetorical techniques, right? A few fragments of his poetry have survived. 5 mina was not a large fee. Pythagoras was said to have charged 100 mina, okay? And note 72 gives the hint of the value of the mina, on page note 72 later. We can go to let's go to it now. Um, let's go here now. Let's go, might as well do it. The next verse here, 72. A mina consists of 100 drachma, a fairly small amount for a fine. 30 mina is a quite large sum. In other words, this is a mina is only 100 drachma, which is a small fine. So if mina is that thing, so it's in other words, it's not much money. He's saying it's not a lot of money. It's inexpensive. Again, what the note says here, 5 mina was really just where 5 mina were two. What was it? Pythagoras would often charge. Uh, uh, okay, he says 100. West says so, and I regard this even as blessed if he should truly have this art and teach as such a modest rate. For for myself, I would be pluming or bragging and priding myself if I had knowledge of these things. But I do not have knowledge of them, men of Athens. Um, Perhaps when okay, now he's saying what he's saying here. He's basically making a joke, saying the guy was cheap, very cheap, selling it cheap compared to Pythagoras. His son spent more money on sophists than that. He had this guy. He was inexpensive, and then Socrates goes, "Now, if I had knowledge about how to make a good human being and how to make a good citizen, I would be bragging as hell and plumbing about." This is like to plume oneself is the word. It's kind of like this. I would be full of pride and priding myself of it if I had knowledge, but I don't have knowledge of this, men of Athens. Now he goes, perhaps then one of you might resort, well, Socrates, what is your affair? Where have these slanders come from? For surely, if you were just in fact practicing nothing more in common than others, such a report an account would not have arisen, unless you were doing something different from the many. So tell us what it is, so that we do not deal unadvisedly with you. He's saying now, what he does, he puts into the jurors' own mind, saying, "Well, okay, if you're just saying that, then how come this happened? Why would people all of a sudden do this? If you were just no different from everyone else, then you must be done something different from everyone else, because if you haven't, these things would not have done. So what did you do? What? Give us an account of what you do, Socrates, and so that we can not do you injustice." Um, I wish I had the thing here that I could deal with this a little bit. Um, so so he goes, and this, it seems that the speaker says, is just, and I will try to demonstrate to you whatever it is that have brought me to this name and slander. So listen, Now perhaps it will seem to some of you to be joking. In other words, be careful. Now, some of you, perhaps I will seem to some of you to be joking. Know well, however, what I tell you is the whole truth. Okay, I'm going to be telling you the whole truth. Some of you might think I'm joking, but I'm going to be telling you the whole truth. For I, men of Athens, have gotten this name through nothing but a certain wisdom. In other words, I have a certain knowledge, a certain wisdom. I have a certain knowledge, a certain wisdom. And what is this? Just what sort of wisdom this is? That which is perhaps human wisdom. For probably I am wise in this. I have some wisdom. I have some kind of wisdom. I don't what kind it is. Maybe it's human wisdom, wisdom of human beings. Uh, 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 for probably I am wise in this, but those of whom I have just spoke might perhaps be wise in some wisdom greater than human, or else I say what it, or else I cannot say what it is. For I do not have such knowledge of it. But whoever asserts that I do lies and speaks in order to slander me. I may have some wisdom, maybe only human wisdom. I don't have no knowledge of the higher things or the lower things. Um, some people may have it. They may know these things, and have better, more wisdom than I, but not me. I only kind of knowledge of human things per se. Um, now listen, please, men of Athens, do not make a disturbance, not even if I seem to you boasting somewhat. For not mine is the story. Now, this is a famous line. It is Euripides' tale. It's one of the great things of Menippe the wise. Mine is that tale, but it's from my mother. It occurs. This verse is occurs realistic accounts of generations of the world and other things. In other words, it is. In other words, mine is not. This is not my story. I'm not. This is not my story. I'm reporting it to you. Um, and I will tell. Rather, I will refer it to a speaker trustworthy to you. For my wisdom, it is indeed in the wisdom of any kind and a sort of thing that it is. I will offer to you, uh, uh, um, uh, 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 and I think this is where we kind of uh, end up. Yeah, we end up here. We'll end here. This is where we end right here. It's introducing Cephalon. Okay. In other words, I will offer to you as witness in the god at Delphi. I'm going to bring a witness here, the god in Delphi, and he's going to bring in Cephalus and Caraphon. Sorry, Caraphon. Now you know Caraphon, no doubt. He was a comrade from youth, as well as a comrade of your multitude, and has shared in your recent exile and return with you. He was a war hero. He was in the exile with the 30 who took over Athens and established a kind of tyranny over Athens. And what happened was the exiles came back and they overthrew that and reestablished a democracy. And Caraphon was one of the ones who became a thing. In other words, Caraphon is one of the Socrates. It was him that's in the clouds. Okay, Caraphon is with him and showing his perpetuosity at the beginning of Charmides. Okay, Socrates calls him a madman. According to Aristophanes, he was pale and withered. Okay, but now this is someone. He also appears at the beginning of the Gorgias. So he's a comrade with Socrates. Particularly, they were friends together when he was younger, and it was like this, and that therefore he's going to bring them as now. And with this, we're going to stop here. This is the first part of the first speech. The first speech is the longest one, so we're going to break it up into manageable portions. Okay. So if you have any questions or any things you want to ask me, or things, put the comments below. If you like this, please share it. Please share it. And I think we're at the end of today's little thing.